from the neighbors, and welcome back to our channel. I have 3 ferrets that are awake right now, and I'm trying to film a video. This never happens. They're normally asleep. I'm a little nervous to make this video. My heart is pounding very hard, did not sleep very well last night, and I've just been in a state of anxiety all day. So let's do it. Opinion number 1. It's good to have different opinions. When you know everything, or you think you know everything, you're not gonna go out of your way to learn more about something. I know how the alphabet goes, so I'm not gonna Google, how does the alphabet go? And the same logic pretty much applies to animal care. If everyone has the same opinions as everything, and everyone therefore knows everything, we're not gonna go out of our way to try and learn new things. And obviously this isn't an excuse for people to have bad ferret opinions, you know, like Friskies is a good ferret food. We can all agree that this is not a food that's good for ferrets, but it is to say that you shouldn't be ashamed for the fact that you have a different care practice or a different opinion than someone, provided you have a reasoning for that opinion and that care practice. So this can mean either you have a reputable scientific source for why you are doing something this way, or you have a realistic experience as to why doing something this way is better. For example, I am personally of the opinion that just because ferrets fight when they are first introduced to each other, that doesn't mean that the ferret you are trying to introduce is a lone ferret or will never get along with other ferrets. I hold this opinion pretty strongly because Ilara is a very ferret-aggressive ferret, and after several months of work, she now lives perfectly happily with my 4 other ferrets. So I believe that that is proof enough of that opinion that I have. And of course, when I say experiences that back your opinion, I do mean realistic and accurate experiences. You can't say something like, my ferret broke their leg, and while they were recovering from the surgery, they were fine, so therefore that means every single ferret in the world should get a leg amputated. That's the kind of logic I see some people trying to use, and that's not what I'm talking about here. The fact of the matter is when you have a different opinion from someone, or you have your opinion challenged, your opinion is actually going to either change for the better, or it is going to become stronger and you're going to have a more solid grounds for why you have the opinion that you have. Because you're going to have defended it against someone and they're going to have been like, no, this is why you're wrong, and you're going to sit there like, actually, this is why I'm right. When everyone has the exact same opinions, that creates an echo chamber. And echo chambers are super problematic literally any time that an echo chamber is created. Because all that an echo chamber is a bunch of people screaming the exact same thing, and then nothing ever changes. If we look back at the ferret care books that I looked at in my other video where I reacted to old ferret care books that I found at the thrift store, you obviously notice a lot of things have changed in ferret care. Those things wouldn't have changed if there hadn't been people that came forward and said, actually, I disagree with this. What if we think about it this way? My own personal opinions on ferrets and ferret care have changed so much in the time that I've been on YouTube and the time that I've been part of the ferret care community, because I've had people challenge the way that I did things, and because of that, my opinions changed and my care practices changed. Having said all of that, if you are someone who's going to express a different opinion wherever you're expressing it online, you have to be prepared for the fact that there are probably going to be people who disagree with you, and because of that, you're going to have to back up your opinion. You can't walk into a room and shout a controversial opinion and then get mad when people disagree with you. You're the one who walked into the room and shouted the opinion. I'm sure that's gonna happen in this video. I've got some pretty controversial opinions, and I almost guarantee there are gonna be plenty of people who watch this video and disagree with me. And I'm not mad about that, because that means that we all have different opinions and we have different experiences, and because of that, ferret care is going to continue to get better and better as more people experience things differently. It is a good thing, and we should be happy about it. Before we move on to any opinions, let me actually do the real intro for this video. I just think that that was a good segue, and I'm proud of myself for it. Obviously, for this video, these are 100% just my opinions. Like I literally just said, I'm sure there are going to be plenty of people who disagree with me, and I'm okay with that. It's all right if you disagree with me. But also at the same time, please make sure to hear me out, because a couple of these I'm going to say and your initial reaction is probably going to be, okay, calm down, Kenya. Let me just elaborate before you cast judgment and go into the comment section. I really think that pretty much nothing in regards to ferret and animal care is black and white. I think that with literally every single care advice you can give, there are specific situations that are going to be going against that, and there are specific situations that are going to be controversial to that. That's just because all animals are different, just like all human beings are different, all ferrets are different. By me pointing out some of my controversial opinions in this video, I'm not pointing a finger at every single person who does this saying, you're wrong and you suck and get off my YouTube channel and I'm calling the police. I'm not saying that because I'm sure there are specific instances where what I'm about to say does not apply. Along with that, this video is not here to attack anyone in particular, okay? These are just my opinions and things that I have observed throughout my experiences being in the ferret care community for the couple years that I've been here. Please keep the comment section to this video relatively civil. I mean, like I said, I know people are going to disagree with me, and I'm 110% okay if you guys voice your disagreement in the comment section, but you can disagree with someone and still be nice. I know it's hard to understand that on the internet, especially given the, cultural context of the internet nowadays, but it is possible to disagree with someone and be nice. I'm gonna pretty much leave the comment section alone, but if I see people being rude and, swearing at each other and just kind of being I'm gonna delete your comment, so, keep that in mind. Opinions can totally change. I said earlier in this video that I had a lot of care practices that I no longer do or I no longer agree with that I had done in the past. That's proof of this enough. So it's possible that maybe one day I won't have these opinions anymore. I don't know, maybe I'll do another controversial ferret care opinion video. Life changes, we move, we grow, that's good. I like growing as a person. I don't know about you guys. Okay, so I think that's all I have to say about that, so then I'm just gonna skip right down to my controversial opinion number 2. Everyone hold on to your seats, please. Controversial opinion number 2, I don't think everyone should feed the raw diet. In my experience and in my opinion, the raw diet is the best way to go when you have ferrets. But that doesn't mean that I think everyone should feed it. I think there are plenty of people out there who are feeding a raw diet and shouldn't be, and I think there are plenty of people out there who are pressured to feed a raw diet and they shouldn't be. Just a short list of people I think should not feed the raw diet. Number 1, immune-compromised people. You're seriously risking your health if you were feeding a raw diet and you were immune-compromised. Don't do that to yourself. It's okay. People who have really young kids. Ferrets stash their meat, and if you have a really young kid crawling around on the floor putting random things into their mouth, I don't think that you should be feeding a raw diet. That just does not seem safe to me. Next, people who don't know how to do it or haven't done enough research. If you are feeding a raw diet, you're feeding a homemade diet, and that means that you need to be 100% confident in the diet that you are feeding your animal. You're directly responsible for the nutrition that your ferret is getting, and therefore directly responsible for any health concerns that might come up because of your lack of proper feeding. I don't know the word I was going for, but you know what I mean. The next people who shouldn't feed a raw diet are people who don't have the resources for it. In my opinion, when it comes to raw, there are 3 very important resources you need. You need time, money, and space. The next people who shouldn't feed raw are people who don't agree with the diet. No scientific studies have been done on a raw diet. That is a fact. You cannot dispute me on that. There have not been any scholarly and scientific studies done on its effect on ferrets. So there are plenty of people out there who don't believe that it's actually a superior diet, and that's okay. Different opinion, you can have it. Personally, I have seen the difference that it's made in my ferrets in literally every single aspect of their life, but if you don't feel comfortable doing that because you believe that there's lack of evidence, you know what? That is totally fine. Lots of vets agree with you. This is why a lot of vets aren't super into the raw diet. I'm really hoping that this changes. I can definitely see it changing in the next couple of years as raw becomes more popular. Until then, people who want to feed a diet that has been scientifically proven, props to you. You're allowed. And the last people that I think should not be feeding a raw diet are people that don't want to. If you don't want to feed a raw diet, you shouldn't, because your lack in passion of what you are doing to take care of your animals is just gonna leave room for error. So don't feed it if you don't want to, please. This needless pressure needs to stop. Having said that, I do think that you should still be feeding your ferret a high quality commercial food. By me saying you don't need to feed your ferret a raw diet, I am absolutely in no way saying that you should feed terrible kibbles like Marshall's or Vercellaga. Is that how you pronounce that? We literally have this food at work and I honest to God don't know how to pronounce the name. It doesn't matter because it's a terrible food anyway and I never talk about it. So please make sure the commercial diet you have your ferret on still is a good quality commercial diet. If you are someone who wants to know what to feed your ferrets, keep watching the video. We're gonna talk about something sort of. My third controversial opinion is something that actually sort of stems from the idea of raw, and that is that Franken-prey is not superior to grinds. Maybe it's just me and maybe I'm just oversensitive, but I feel like in the raw feeding ferret community, there's this hierarchy, and for some reason people who feed a Franken-prey based diet are seen as better than people who feed grinds, and I just think that's freaking ridiculous. I started my ferrets on grinds when I first got them onto a raw diet because it seemed easier to transition them to that and then go on to Franken-prey. I actually fed them grinds for a couple months and I was kind of happy to sit with them on grinds, and then I started to feel this unnecessary pressure to feed Franken-prey as if I was somehow not as good ferret owner if I wasn't feeding a Franken-prey diet. So I switched to Franken-prey, and let me tell you, I didn't love it. The one benefit that Franken-prey does have over grinds, which I will admit is a benefit, is that when your ferrets are on Franken-prey, they're chewing meat and bone, and so it's a lot better for their oral health. On grinds, plaque builds up pretty quickly on their teeth, just like it does when they're on kibble. But this is easy to avoid by just feeding them raw meaty bones a couple times a week. I switched back to grinds for a couple reasons, and these are probably things that apply more to me than to other people, but I still want to talk about them. So the main reason is on grinds, my ferrets have more variety with what they're eating. When I was on Franken-prey, they were eating mostly chicken with some rabbit, duck, and beef thrown in there every once in a while. Whereas on grinds, I have them on 7 different proteins, I believe, that I do a rotation through. The second reason is I kind of see it as a more natural way of eating a raw diet. This, I don't have any backing for. It's just kind of an observation of mine, so I could be completely wrong. Please point out to me if anyone has any resources for this being wrong. When you think about it, if a ferret was eating a mouse in the wild, ferret would eat the whole mouse. It's not like it's gonna specifically sit down and eat a meal of organ and then eat a meal of muscle and then eat a meal of heart. It just seems really weird to me to be feeding a super nutrient dense meal and then feed a meal that isn't quite as nutrient dense. And it just makes me worry that like maybe your ferret isn't absorbing as much of the nutrients. Something like taurine is water soluble, so if you're feeding a meal of heart and then you're not feeding heart again for another couple days, they're only getting so much taurine out of that original heart meal, and then they're not getting very much taurine for the next couple days. I don't know, to me that's just questionable. And of course that's specifically only for people who are balancing over a week. If you're feeding a Franken-prey meal where you're balancing per meal, or I don't know, even per day, this isn't as much of an issue. But if you have multiple ferrets and you're doing that, it becomes complicated because then you have to give them each individual little dishes to make sure that they're all eating the proper amounts of everything, and it's just like a whole... I can't imagine doing that. It sounds terrible. There's also stool consistency to sort of, spin off of that. My ferrets will go from one morning having a really runny stool because they had an organ soup, and then a couple hours later they'll be having a really firm and possibly uncomfortable stiff stool because they had a meal that was really heavy in bones. I don't know. Like personally, I just wouldn't really vibe with going between having explosive diarrhea and being constipated like in the same day. That just seems like a roller coaster that I don't really feel like being on. Organ soups are a whole other reason why I switched back to grinds. My ferrets hated organ soups. I had them on grinds for like 7 months, I want to say, and literally throughout that entire 7 months, I had to spoon feed them every single organ soup meal. Spoon feeding every organ soup meal when you have 5 ferrets? That's a lot of time taken out of my day that I wish I could have done other things with. And that sort of branches off to the last reason why I switched back to grinds, and it's just because Franken-prey takes a lot of time out of my day that I just didn't want to be giving to that. I would spend like half an hour every morning cutting up food for my ferrets, and then I would spend at least 3 hours every Sunday prepping their food for the following week. That's a lot of time in a week that I could have been doing other things like rewatching Skate the Infinity for the 23rd time. Or, hanging out with my ferrets. And like I said, these are all reasons that I personally chose to switch back to grinds. The opinion here isn't that grinds are better. The opinion here is that grinds aren't worse, and I just feel like people who feed grinds are shamed as for some reason being worse, and I just don't understand it. My fourth controversial opinion is that I don't really like ferret rooms. Whoa. Pitchforks away, okay? I'm gonna elaborate real quickly because I guarantee that 80% of the people who are watching this video just got real mad. I don't think ferret rooms are always awful, okay? I think there are plenty of people who have ferret rooms that are absolutely amazing. I've seen pictures of amazing ferret rooms. I have friends with amazing ferret rooms. But I think that we need to talk about what does and doesn't constitute a good ferret room, and we need to make that a more active discussion when we're talking about the care of ferrets. I have a pet peeve, and it's something that I experience a lot more when I meet people in person who have ferrets as opposed to people online who have ferrets. I get this a lot when I'm at work and someone tells me about their ferrets. They say, my ferret has a whole room to itself. And I do want to punch them in the face a little bit. And I'm a pacifist, so that means that it was a really strong emotional reaction from me. It seems like they're trying to make it sound like they're better for the fact that their ferret has a ferret room. I used to have a ferret room, and that's why I have this opinion, because I've seen the difference in my ferrets from when I did have a ferret room to now, when my ferrets are, in my space 24/7, and we're always up in each other's business. Right, Alara?
Right.
There are obviously people out there who do need ferret rooms for a bunch of different reasons. People who have other pets that can't be left unsupervised with their ferrets. People who physically can't ferret-proof a specific part of their house. People who live with roommates or family that they just don't trust to be around their ferrets and to be careful with either what they're leaving around the house or the space that their bodies take up. And I'm sure that there are more reasons for why people have their ferrets in a ferret room out there. Those are just the three that come to mind when I initially think about what kind of people need a ferret room when they have ferrets. Now, Kenya, why do you have this opinion as to why ferret rooms aren't great? I'm glad you asked, person who isn't here because I'm talking to myself and I'm alone in my bedroom. There are a couple reasons why I don't super vibe with the idea of ferret rooms, both from my experiences and from what I've seen talking to people in the ferret care community online. The first one is just that you are potentially not spending enough time with your ferrets. This is one that I was super guilty of when I had a ferret room. Because my ferrets were in a separate room from me all the time, I just didn't see them very often. Nowadays, with my ferrets constantly being around me, if Nova decides she wants me to come pick her up and give her some nice cute little lovin' with some scratches and some kisses, all she has to do is come sit next to my leg and lick my ankle. That is Nova's way of saying pick me up. If she was in a completely separate room from me, that wouldn't work out because she would not physically be in my space. That's how it works. Potentially with ferret rooms, there are also a lot of safety risks. Lots of people will put their ferrets' toys in their ferret rooms with them. When it comes to cages, ferrets shouldn't have their toys in their cage because they might chew on them while you're not watching them, and that could lead to a blockage. In my opinion, the same sort of applies to ferret rooms. Actually, ferret rooms are kind of just glorified ferret cages that are a lot bigger, and I do think they should be treated in the same way. I used to put toys in my ferret room when I had a ferret room too, and a lot of times I would find them super chewed up, and I didn't know that they had been chewing them because I wasn't there when they were doing it. As opposed to when they are in my living space, if I hear Lyra chewing on a toy that I know she shouldn't be chewing on, I can just take the toy away from her because I hear it because she's under the bed doing it, and it's a very obvious noise. The third reason I don't vibe with them is that there is the potential for it being too small. I think that the ferret room I used to have when I had my ferrets in a ferret room was too small. I'll admit that. If your ferret is in a ferret room, this is their living space 24/7, most of the time. I'll touch on that in a second. Your ferrets are probably going to get pretty bored, just like they would be if they were in their cage 24/7. And that leads us sort of to the last reason why I'm not super big fan of ferret rooms is lack of enrichment. Once again, they're a glorified cage. There's not very much fun stuff to do if it's the same fun stuff you've been doing for your entire life. There are cures for all of these things, and I'm sure there are plenty of people who just heard my reasons of why I don't like ferret rooms, and in my head they were saying, okay, I don't do that, okay, here's a way around this, okay, Kenya, you're wrong, shut up, I'm closing the tab and turning this video off, I'm unsubscribing, you suck, I never want to talk to you again. First off, you're just gonna wanna make sure that you're spending a lot of time in your ferret room with your ferrets. When I was in university is when my ferrets had their ferret room, and I was busy. I was in university classes, I had 2 jobs, I was doing YouTube sort of on the side to try and make this become a thing. So there were some days where the only times that I was actually spending time with them was those 5 minutes it took for me to clean their litter boxes. Shame on me. That is bad. I admit that that is bad, and that's why I don't do it anymore. So if you're someone who has ferrets in a ferret room, you have to be really conscious of this. Your ferrets need to play with each other just as much as they need to play with you. You're their owner. They want to spend time with you. Ferrets love people. That's why they're such amazing pets. And so you need to accommodate for the fact that you are the one that has to put forth the effort to be seeing them. This could mean a bunch of different things. Maybe you have a special amount of time that you spend in there playing with them every morning and every evening. Maybe you bring your homework in there and do your homework on the floor so that you're just around them even if they're still asleep. It's really important for your ferret to spend time around you, is what I'm saying. And that's what stresses me out about ferret rooms, is the idea that they might not be doing that. You're gonna wanna very, very regularly be deep cleaning your ferret room, and this is both because, you know, you need to clean it just like you would a cage, but also so that you can keep an eye on any toys or bedding that has been chewed, and then you can toss that so that they don't keep doing that, and so you can check to make sure that everything is ferret-proofed if there are things in that room that are ferret-proofed. And another one of the biggest things that I can recommend is, if you are able to, I think that you should be letting your ferrets out of the ferret room as regularly as you can. Like I said, I really see a ferret room as a glorified cage. Of course, depending on the individual ferret room, don't come at me. I'm sure there are exceptions to this. And so I think the same idea of out of cage time should apply to your ferrets if they are in a ferret room. This ties into lack of enrichment, which is one of the reasons I don't like ferret rooms. Your ferrets are probably gonna get bored in there. So if you can let them out into your house or into a new place to explore a couple hours every day, that's gonna be really good for them. It's gonna get them super excited. They're gonna be running around, they're gonna be duking, they're gonna be chasing each other, they're gonna be just doing weird that ferrets do because they do so much weird shit. And that's good for them. You know, I've said it once, I'll say it again. Let the noodles be silly. Just let them. Just let them be silly. And if you're someone who can't let your ferrets out of their ferret room for whatever reason, I'm sure there are very valid reasons as to why you can't, I would recommend changing up what you have in there pretty often. Whether this means rotating different toys, rotating different beds, maybe you have a small cat tower that you can rotate between once a week, because you really need to give them something new to do and something new to explore, or they are gonna get bored. Now, to branch off of my dislike of ferret rooms, we have something on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. I don't like cage-free living. Once again, please put the pitchforks away. I don't want the pitchforks. We're not here for the pitchforks. Hear me out. I told you guys you had to hear me out. Yes, ferrets aren't caged pets. Ferrets should not be in their cages 24/7. It's been said. But I really still think that they should have cages. Cages act as a home base sort of space for your ferrets, and this can be beneficial for a lot of different reasons. First off, it gives you a place to put their food, especially if you're raw feeding. I think feeding in the cage is a good idea because it just limits the amount of area that they can track their raw food. Also, ferrets get a certain sense of security from having a space that they're like, oh, you know, this is mine, this is where I'm cozy. My ferrets normally sleep in their cage. If I were to lift that blue blanket, I guarantee that I would have at least 4 of them in there right now. In fact, I'm gonna test that theory. I stand corrected, there's only 1. Speaking about being wrong, cages also act as a place that you can put them when they can't be out for whatever reason. I do a really deep clean of my room once a week, and I clean my floors, and I just don't want my ferrets running around chasing the mop. So, cage. Also, if you have your ferrets running around your house when you aren't home, that scares me. And again, you know, there's cases where people have 110% ferret-proof their home, and, you know, they're golden, their ferrets are living their best life and everything's totally fine and there's never going to be an issue. I'm super happy for you. I just don't think that you are in the majority of people. I cage my ferrets when I'm not home, and I think that that's a pretty common practice that I would argue most people should be doing. When you aren't home, there's a bunch of stuff that could happen, from your ferrets getting into something that they shouldn't to there being an emergency situation. And if there's an emergency situation and your ferrets are running around the house, it's going to be a little bit harder to manage that emergency situation. Having your ferrets be put in a cage sometimes also helps with their enrichment, believe it or not, because when they are around everything that they're used to being around all the time, they get bored of it. Whereas when you put your ferret in their cage at night, in the morning, they are going to be stoked to be outside of their cage, and they're going to be running around and they're going to be duking and they're going to be having a great time. I cage my ferrets at night most of the time, and I can tell you from personal experience, the nights where I don't cage them as opposed to the nights where I do, they are significantly happier in the mornings when I do cage them. And I think that's great because it means all 5 of them are running around playing with each other, and all 5 of them have like an hour or 2 to express their energy, as opposed to the nights where I don't put them in their cage when they kind of just their way through the morning because they've been around all this stuff all day. This is not exciting, Mom. Excite me, please. Now, if you are someone who lives with cage-free ferrets, like I said, I'm sure there are people it works for, and I'm sure there are people who are avoiding all of the concerns that I have with cage-free living. I would recommend to always make sure that you have a kennel ready, just in case there is an emergency situation or you just need to put your ferrets somewhere really quickly. Just like if you have your ferrets in a ferret room, make sure that you're doing pretty regular sweeps of the space that your ferrets are in to make sure that everything you have ferret-proofed is properly ferret-proofed and there hasn't been any chewing on cords or toys or anything like that. And on that train of thought, you really need to make sure everything is extremely ferret-proofed if you have cage-free ferrets. Just to reiterate on this opinion, because I know that there are a lot of people who do have cage-free ferrets, I don't think that it's impossible to have safe ferrets living cage-free, but I do think that we need to not promote it as better or superior because that's dangerous. When you're promoting it as better than having ferrets that live in a cage, you're gonna have someone who thinks to themselves, oh, I'm gonna throw my ferret cage away because I want to be a better owner. And they're not gonna be prepared for what it means to have cage-free ferrets, and that can lead to a really dangerous situation. The 6th controversial ferret opinion that I have is most ferrets should be vaccinated. Rabies and distemper are the 2 most common vaccines given to ferrets, and I think that that's very reasonable, and ferrets who can get these vaccines should be getting them. Distemper is something that can be tracked in on clothing, on other animals, through the air. It is very easy for your ferrets to catch if it is in the area, and guess what? It is 100% fatal. Personally, that scares me, so I like to vaccinate my ferrets. One of the main reasons people don't like vaccines, which I do still think is a reasonable reason, but we need to talk about a little bit more, is vaccine reactions. Ferrets can have reactions to vaccines, and these can be mild reactions, such as vomiting, lethargy, and loose stool, or they can have extreme reactions, which can result in death. But I personally think vaccine reactions are blown a little bit out of proportion. If you're someone who has had a ferret that has an extreme vaccine reaction, I'm not trying to discredit your experience or anything or say that you had done something wrong. Obviously you didn't, and I'm so sorry that that happened to you. But I still think it's more rare than people paint it to be honest. I didn't vaccinate my girls for about 2 years because I kind of hopped on the, oh, if I vaccinate my ferrets, they're gonna have a reaction and they're gonna die train. And after moving to a different city and starting to see a different vet that I expressed these concerns to, my opinion changed and I started vaccinating my ferrets again. The biggest thing I can give you guys as a takeaway from this opinion is talk to your vet, please. And even if at the end of that conversation you decide you still don't want to vaccinate your ferrets, that's fine. But it's really important to be talking to your individual specific vet about your individual specific ferret, because every single situation is going to be different and every vet is going to have different experiences. When I had the initial conversation with my new vet that made me change my mind and made me want to vaccinate my ferrets again, I asked her how many times she had seen a reaction when giving a ferret vaccines. My vet is extremely experienced with ferrets. She is pretty much the ferret vet expert in my area. She's been handling ferrets for upwards of 15 years now, and I trust her wholeheartedly with my ferrets. She told me that she's only seen a handful of reactions and none of them have been fatal in 15 years. So I think that that kind of speaks for itself. When having a conversation with your vet on whether or not you are going to be vaccinating your ferrets, it's really important that you ask them about their vaccine protocol in order to make sure that they are going to be safely giving your ferrets vaccines. There's a couple things that you're going to really want to make sure you're looking out for, and a couple things that you can jot down as red flags if you hear your vet not talk about it. The first one is you really want to go with a vet who has experience giving ferrets vaccines, because that means that they are probably aware of the risks and they know how to properly and safely go about doing it. A vet that only takes morning appointments for vaccines is definitely a good idea. Some ferrets won't have reactions until a couple hours later, so you want to make sure that the vet you're taking them to is still going to be open if that happens, and you can run them back and they can handle the situation. The biggest one to make sure of, and if you have a vet who doesn't say they do this, walk out the door, don't come back, they're terrible. Make sure you're going with a vet who waits at least 2 weeks between vaccines. The next thing is to make sure that your vet is going to be pre-medding with Benadryl. You also definitely want a vet that makes sure you stay after the appointment to watch for any extreme reactions. My vet normally makes me stay for about 45 minutes, so you're aiming for anywhere around there. If your ferret is going to have an extreme reaction, it'll be in that time. Any reaction after that is probably just going to be a mild one, which you're still going to definitely want to take them back to the vet if they have, but it's less likely it's going to be something extreme. And if your ferret ever does have a reaction to a vaccine, I would recommend that you no longer vaccinate them. That's why when I talked about this opinion, I said most ferrets should be vaccinated, not all, because ferrets sometimes will have a mild reaction, and at that point your vet should say, "Whoa there, friend, you might want to slow down," and we don't vaccinate this ferret anymore. Guess what? I don't vaccinate Nova. And this isn't because she's had a reaction, this is because she has adrenal and insulinoma. She's already on 2 different medications for her insulinoma and a monthly steroid for her adrenal. Because of that and her age, I just don't feel comfortable vaccinating her anymore. That is something that I've talked to with my vet, and my vet also agrees that, you know what, maybe with Nova, we just don't. So if you decide not to vaccinate your ferrets, which completely up to you, and something that I have decided not to do for one of my ferrets, so I'm also in this boat, there are some things that you're going to want to make sure that you're keeping in mind. First off, don't let strangers handle your ferrets. 2 main reasons are you don't know if they are carrying something, and secondly, if your ferret were to bite this person and your ferret didn't have the rabies vaccine and this person chose to pursue legal actions, you run a risk of your ferret being euthanized. Of course, this isn't going to happen all the time, and I'm sure that not a lot of people who get bitten by a ferret are going to go running to their lawyers, but it is a risk and it's important to keep in mind. Make sure you're aware of the laws in your area. There are quite a lot of places where it's actually a legal requirement for ferrets to have at least their rabies vaccine, so if you have ferrets and you don't have them vaccinated, that is something that you're going to want to be aware of. I think it's a good idea to keep up to date with any outbreaks in your area. Last year there was an outbreak of kennel cough around me. Kennel cough is something that ferrets cannot be vaccinated for, but it is something that they can catch. So during this time I was just trying my best to always be washing my hands when I get home from anywhere. I work with animals for a living, so I'm around a lot of dogs, and I didn't take my ferrets in public during this time. Thankfully this was also when lockdown was happening, so most people were pretty conscious about washing their hands very often. Actually in my city we joked about it being doggy COVID, and I thought that was pretty funny. I would recommend not taking your ferrets into public if you are someone who doesn't vaccinate them. And this is just because, like I said, distemper is very easy for your ferrets to catch. It can be carried on clothing, and animals that have it don't necessarily show signs of it. Rabies is a lot easier to avoid because it can only be transmitted if your ferret is bitten by an animal that has rabies. So just, you know, Possibly don't let your ferret get bitten by random animals. That might be a good bit of advice too. And the last piece of advice is if you are handling other animals or in an area with abundance of other animals, make sure that you're washing your hands between that and handling your ferrets, just in case. Possibly give yourself a little change of clothing too, because you just don't want them to get distemper. Trust me, you don't want your ferrets to get distemper. The 7th controversial ferret care opinion that I have is the online ferret community isn't bad. You guys are just mean. I think the fact that I've been an internet gremlin for like 14 years now has really just prepared me for, the toxicity of online communities. As many of you can tell, I'm a big time nerd loser, and because of that, I spend a lot of time with fandom. Fandoms are so bad sometimes, and that has prepared me for instances where other communities are possibly not super great. The thing is that a lot of people forget, I think, when you're online, is that you are personally in charge of your experience online. And if you are in a space online that you don't have a good time in, and there's mean people, and some comments are being said that you don't like, and you cry yourself to sleep every night, it's your job to get yourself out of that space. Whether that's leaving the Discord server, leaving the Facebook group, closing the Twitter tab, whatever it is, it's your job to remove yourself from that situation. If you're continuing to have a bad time because you're refusing to do that, just leave. I've been in plenty of online spaces for ferret owners where I just did not vibe. I would argue with people, I didn't see eye to eye with certain people, and not in a healthy, we have different opinions, let's debate this way, in a, I have a different opinion than you and now you are attacking me kind of way. And every time that happens, I just make my mind up to say, you know what? I'm a peace out real quick. Just kidding, I'm right here. Yep, there are lots of bad spaces for ferret owners online. There's a reason I don't use Facebook and I refuse to go on Facebook ferret owner groups. They just don't look like a fun time to me. But just because there are some that are bad doesn't mean that the community as a whole is bad. You have the power to create your own community. Make your own Discord server, make your own Facebook group, make your own those are the only 2 that I know of. Make your own group of friends, have a good time with them. You don't need to be in touch with the entire community to be in touch with a community. My very last controversial ferret care opinion, number 8, is I think ferrets are very sugar-coated online. Social media portrays ferrets as these cute little snuggly noodles that love to give kisses and are super cute when they play and they snuggle up to their owners and everything's fine and perfect and dandy and there's never anything that's ever wrong with anything. This is a lie. I don't believe it. I really see ferrets as a give more than you get type of pet. And that's not to say that ferrets aren't good pets. Ferrets are amazing pets. There's a reason I have 5 of them and I have an entire YouTube channel dedicated to them and I'm pursuing a career in taking care of them. I love ferrets, but I don't think that ferrets are for everyone, and I think that both the ferret community and people who are curious to own them as animals need to be careful when it comes to how they are portraying and understanding ferrets. I don't think that every single TikTok posted that has a cute ferret needs to have a giant disclaimer saying, "Disclaimer, ferrets are hard to care for pets. Don't get one if you don't know what it's like to own a ferret." We don't need to go to that level, but we also need to really open the discussion up to talking about the bad sides of owning ferrets, like how expensive they are, like how they smell bad, like how, yes, they do bite. There's a lot of bad things that come with owning ferrets, and I think people need to bring them up more often. That's all I'm saying. I have a video called 10 Reasons Ferrets Make Good and Bad Pets, and I actually don't like this video anymore because I think I am guilty of sugarcoating it. What it comes down to is pretending that ferrets are easy to care for and fun, and every single second of owning a ferret is going to be the best second of your entire life until your life just continues going on and on with better and better seconds of your life, and you're living literally the best life that any person in the entire world has ever lived. That's problematic. We shouldn't be portraying it that way because it sets an unrealistic expectation, which leads to people impulse buying ferrets and ferrets ending up needing to be rehomed because people realize what actual ferret ownership is like. And it isn't completely on the people who are talking about why ferrets are good. Of course, we need to also talk about why ferrets are good. It's equally on people who need to be doing more research on the type of care that goes into ferrets, and they need to be purposefully asking people and researching why ferrets aren't amazing pets and the difficulties that come with owning ferrets. Did I make that opinion clear? I hope I did. Well, there you have it, guys. Those are my controversial ferret care opinions. Like I said at the beginning of this video, I'm not trying to target you if you have different opinions than me. Please revisit opinion number 1 I had about different opinions if you're someone who's sitting there angry, because I'm happy that you have different opinions than me. We can all learn and grow. I might change my opinions on all of these things at some point in my life. Who knows? Who knows? We're all growing and changing.
I'm not.
I said earlier that I was going to be talking about ferret kibble at some point in this video, and my way of talking about it is going to be right now when I tell you that I'm going to talk about it later. I'm not going to be posting a video next week, and this is because, number one, I'm going on a trip, and number two, I am going to be spending that week doing research because I'm going to be posting a 7 to 10 part series on how to pick a kibble for your ferrets. The reason I'm saying 7 to 10 is that I just don't know how long it's going to be yet. I have most of my research compiled. I got to do a couple other small things and I just have to split it up between parts. I was going to do one super long video, but I just don't feel like putting out a 2-hour long video. I just think that would be a long time for me to talk and it'd be a long time for you guys to listen. So instead I'm going to be doing parts. Now, while I'm releasing these parts, I'm still going to be doing my regularly scheduled content. As of right now, my plan is to be releasing these videos every single Friday until I'm done with the series, and then I will hopefully be keeping my regular upload schedule of Sundays for my usual videos. Possibly this might change, we'll see what happens. I lack consistency and I can't commit to anything, so you know. So yes, look forward to that video. It will not be posted this coming Friday, but the Friday after. That's when we're talking about our first part, because we have so much to say about kibble. There are so many things to bring up if people want to be feeding ferrets a good kibble. Do you want to eat kibble? No? Do you want to eat rabbit? You heard it here first, folks. Thank you guys so much for watching this week's video. I will see you guys not next week, but the week after when I talk about kibble. And then after that, I will be doing something. I'm not sure what yet because I don't plan that far ahead. See you guys.